And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And let's check in with Mike Papantonio, the attorney, the host of the Ring of Fire Radio. He's an author as well. ringofireradio.com is the website. Hey, Pap, welcome back.
Tom, how are you?
Just great. You know, we were having a conversation this morning when we were putting this show together and the TV show and kicking around the idea of, is there some way, without really blowing up the First Amendment, to hold these climate change deniers, the Rex Tillerson, ExxonMobil, Koch brothers, the guys who are funding the front men, the phony scientists, to hold them responsible for literally the death and destruction that they are causing and that they will cause in much greater proportion around the world. And the consensus that we came to was we should ask somebody who really knows this stuff. Is this analogous, for example, to the tobacco industry saying, well, tobacco won't cause cancer, and then you're one of the people who took them on, so we decided to ask you.
It really, there's not a lot of analogy there, Tom. I think the best way to explain this is if you start with Michael Mann. Michael Mann was, of course, the climate scientist who came up with the notion of the hockey stick. He showed what mankind was doing to the environment. He said it was directly related to mankind's use of fossil fuel, said it's killing our planet, showed everybody how that was happening. And then scientist after scientist started lining up behind Michael Mann. And the industry did exactly what I see almost every day the industry doing, and that is to attack the scientists that have anything to say about the way they're conducting business. So that's what they did with Michael Mann. Now, Michael Mann brought a lawsuit in the United States that was a slander defamation lawsuit, tried to articulate damages about how bad this is hurting, and he actually made it past some of the first test, which is motion to dismiss. And at this point, I think he's even made it past summary judgment. But if I were advising Michael Mann, I would have told him, probably you should bring this case in the UK. You should bring it in England, because they have different standards in England. For example, in England, when you assert the kind of story that Michael Mann has here, where he's received death threats, his job has suffered, his money, he's suffered economic losses because of it, his family has suffered. They've just completely made up stories about him just out of the thin blue, just out of the air. And so a case like that in the UK has a better chance at surviving than it does in the United States. And there's there's a simple reason. The United States has something what they call the New York Times malice rule. And you have to say that a person that rises to a public figure, that they have to show pretty ugly conduct in order to make an argument that they have been defamed, because of the First Amendment protects the person who makes the claim of, no matter how outrageous it is, New York Times malice rule is pretty tough to overcome. In the UK, not the case. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting in the UK. In the UK, the burden is on the defendant, the person who has made these statements, to prove that the statements caused no harm, or that the statements were true. Now, it's a shift of burden, and the chances of success in the UK is much better. When you're talking about something as big as global climate change, it doesn't make any difference what forum you go to. You simply go to the best forum. All you're really trying to do, you're trying to make the lives miserable for the people who fund this trash. You're trying to engage in discovery. Here's what's important. What we find anytime we're involved in a lawsuit, and you can get me in front of a CEO, and I have the right to ask questions, the company suffers really badly, because I ask questions that cause them harm. Those questions are then made public. We're involved right now with half a dozen cases like that, where the company is more concerned about the public image than they are protecting that CEO. So what you do is you go to the best forum, and I would say the best forum is the UK, because of a whole collection of reasons.
That's very interesting. If I could just dial this back to tobacco and climate change. We've got, you had, RJR and friends saying to us, go ahead and, via Ronald Reagan, if you got a sore throat, smoke Pall Malls. It's not going to harm you. denying harm. And we now have, in the climate change realm, you've got big oil. I mean, ExxonMobil has actually funded some of these groups overtly, and presumably the Koch brothers as well, who are saying, no, carbon dioxide is really not causing problems. And meanwhile, people literally, I mean, Sandy killed people. There are events that are they fall so outside the normal distribution of random events that they almost certainly are caused by climate change. Is it not possible to go after them the same way, the fossil fuel industry, the carbon dioxide producing industry, the same way that we went after the tobacco industry?
Yeah, well, one fundamental in the law, the type of thing you're talking about, it's a very important fundamental. It's called the Paulsograph case. The Paulsograph case said that the person bringing the case has to show that the party they're bringing it for, that the connection between the conduct of the defendant and the injury of the plaintiff is so direct that the causal relationship, we can conclude there's a causal relationship. Tobacco, for example, what we did in the tobacco cases, we got attorney generals from each state that had a direct loss because of the Medicaid money that they were having to pay out for people who were dying from COPD or cancer. Now, this isn't quite the situation because you have so many complicating factors. The best argument would be that if you had a population that was affected with something, there's many ways to get to it, but one way is you have to show that a population is affected directly. Here's 10 people or here's 100 people, and this climate change has affected those people directly in a direct type of injury.
People who live on the Jersey Shore?
Well, there is a connection probably, but again, Tom, it's a very difficult road to go unless you're able to show real clear causation. Right. In the Jersey Shore case, you would have to say, but for the conduct of the defendant, okay, which might be the people who financed the global climate denier, might have been people actually directly involved in creating phonied up literature that's coming from the universities. You'd have to say, but for their conduct, this would not have occurred.
So we just have to wait for this extreme weather to get so extreme that
I don't take that route. I think you do what Michael Mann is doing. Listen, the thing that you do is you make climate deniers, you put them in a posture, Tom, to where it's not worth it for them to be taken to court in a place like the UK and to be made into a fraud, because what you do is you dry up their money. Ultimately, people don't hire them anymore. Right. They're known as fraud. They're known as climate denier frauds who are paid for by the industry. That's what you have to do time and time again. I've always thought the best way at this is an organization that puts together a big bunch of money and simply goes after these people one at a time, makes their lives so miserable that, by God, they don't want to sign off on phonied up biostitute literature that's coming out of the universities right now.
A lot of these guys who are denying climate change, I mean, Singer, I mean, they used to be tobacco guys.
Of course, yeah. Look, you actually have people that will work for, you see them switching sides all the time. You see them, sometimes they just stay with industry. They are what I call biostitutes, and that is they will prostitute their degree, they'll prostitute their position at a university, position with an organization, maybe a governmental agency. They will prostitute it for the right amount of money all the time. Always can count on that.
Fascinating. Mike Papantonio, America's lawyer, giving us very good legal advice here. Well, maybe you shouldn't call it that, right? I don't know. Pap, great having you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you, John.
And check out Pap's website, ringofireradio.com, and of course listen for ringofire.com, and be sure to listen to his radio program on the weekends. We'll be right back.